There is a new epidemic hitting this country, and nobody wants to talk about it. So, guys, this epidemic that I'm talking about is called loneliness. Loneliness is seemingly a big problem here in the United States. In fact, it's so big that the rate of people offing themselves because they're lonely skyrocket. Now, there are a lot of people running into this problem in other countries, but I'm not going to talk about that. If I'm not mistaken, Japan and China are two of those countries that are suffering a higher rate of people offing themselves because of loneliness. Especially in countries like Japan, where they're being outnumbered by girls, if I'm not mistaken, and they're not being able to find, no, they're not being outnumbered, excuse me, reverse that. They're having a problem finding a mate in China, the men are. And so they're just suffering this like intolerable loneliness there. I know Japan's having the same reason, same problem, but I think it's for different reasons. But here in the United States, loneliness was somewhat of an epidemic even before the Mr. 19 event. And you heard people all the time talk about how lonely they are and they needed friends and all this other bullshit. In fact, you saw a lot of teenage kids who were being bullied off themselves for that reason because they had no friends. That was here and there. Now, 2025, we're seeing it almost all the time, especially in males, out of all people. Young males are offing themselves because they're lonely, because they don't have friends, because they have no one to talk to. At least they think they don't. The other side of that coin is there's a side of men, such as myself, that we just suck it up. There's nothing else. There's nowhere else for us to go other than sucking it up and dealing with it. Now, yes, do people like myself have friends? Absolutely. But do people like myself suffer from loneliness from time to time? Yes, from time to time. These people who are suffering it chronically is because they're always lonely and they have no one to turn to, especially if they're a weirdo. And let me interject with the weirdo shit. There's some weirdos out there that just need to be left alone. You're like, Negro, that's fucking weird. Stay the fuck over there. That shit I understand. But there are other people who are just normal, run-of-the-mill kids or men or women who are suffering from this loneliness. And the loneliness epidemic, it's so bad, I don't understand why we're not talking about it. Instead, we're talking about Diddy and his bullshit. We're talking about every wrong move Trump makes. Every time he fucking sneezes or scratches his ass the wrong way, it's in the media. Meanwhile, there are kids left and right screaming for help, asking at school, looking for friends, just looking to fit in, and it's not happening. It's also up to us to make sure that our kids are not the bullies, making these kids the weirdos, if you will, or the strangers, or making fun of them for whatever bullshit that kids are making fun of kids for now. Because at least back in the days, we got made fun of when we took it. We were like, all right, whatever, fuck you and your mother. That was like our response. Now these kids, they get bullied and they fucking curl up into a ball and I'm so lonely, and then they off themselves. Just a month ago, I think the girl's 12 or 13, she offed herself because she didn't have any friends. So she said. I mean, again, I'm not going to argue that, but again, that's a problem. Now, a lot of the loneliness really started spiking after the whole Mr. 19 event, actually during it, right? When people were home alone, they had no one to talk to, they really didn't have any friends that they could visit, especially if other friends had strict parents or were scared of Mr. 19. So you had a lot of those kids talk about that and how they felt weird. They felt like the weirdo. And because some kids didn't take the arm ticket, that was another layer of loneliness added on, because a lot of parents are like, well, if he's not arm ticketed, I don't want you hanging out with him. And yes, that has happened. In fact, my kids couldn't go to their bullshit kid graduation because they didn't have the arm ticket. They had to do it via the computer. Go figure that shit out, right? So just keep that in mind, that the world created this loneliness compounded with certain things like the arm ticket, Mr. 19, and so on. And then people became so wrapped into their video games and their looking on YouTube at their favorite YouTuber, they were less inclined to go outside and deal with the world. I have some stats for you, so let's go over them. People suffering loneliness between the ages of 30 to 44 were the loneliest group at 29%. 18 to 29 were at a rate of 24%. Ages 45 to 64 were at the rate of 20%. Anybody over the age of 65 was at a 10% rate of loneliness, meaning this is where the rates were. Now, at 65 and over, you're at an old age home, so you're really not lonely. You got nurses to bother you, you got doctors, you got Gertrude and her girls playing bingo, inviting you over for bingo night and shit like that, Parcheesi, movie night. So you're not lonely at that age. That's why it's probably so low. The other thing is, a lot of older people are comfortable with being lonely or by themselves, so they don't consider themselves lonely, so they're not in that category. You have to also take that into effect. A lot of these kids at these ages that feel lonely, especially starting at the ages of, 30 to 45, you're entering a weird era where a lot of these people do have families. They have kids. So if you are single and not married, you're definitely going to be in that lonely realm because life changes, and people who don't adapt, they stay in that realm by themselves for a long time until they get a little older. And then in some cases, if you get married too early, now you don't have any friends to hang out with because you're always taking care of your kid. You sort of think you're lonely, but you're not, because you got a kid to entertain you, and hopefully you have the husband or the father of the child still in your life to keep you from entering that lonely phase. Nonetheless, guys, it is still an issue that's going to continue to grow because it's not being addressed. And with that bad side of loneliness comes people offering themselves, which has increased. So if you know anybody who's alone, if you know anybody who's lonely, do yourself a favor and call them up, connect with them, meet with them if you can, identify it if you can, and definitely start hanging out with them and try to include them on some of your plans if you can, and if you can tolerate them, because there is also that. Other than that, guys, this is The Angry Prepper. Thank you for watching the Angry Truth channel.